Hey, what's up guys? John here. Los Angeles and California, it's the pit of homelessness. If you've ever driven through any streets in Los Angeles, even $1 million neighborhoods, you'll see RVs parked up and down every single street. Under every bridge, you'll see tents. It's really changing, and not changing in a good way. It's changing in a sense that California feels like they need to step up and do something about this homelessness problem. Well, I believe I have a very unique ability to determine what's going on here for a couple reasons. One, I've built housing units in Los Angeles. I've contributed to supply in Los Angeles. I work with building and safety, and I've really seen what it takes to actually supply units to Los Angeles. And B, growing up, my father's best friend had a heroin addiction and lived with us for about 20 years. For about 20 years, from when I was about 12, I moved out about 17, 18, and when I came back, he was still at my dad's, bouncing back and forth off the couch and in the streets of Camden, New Jersey. And what I've seen a lot, and I've learned a lot throughout that entire experience. And my sister runs a charity that helps about 1,000 homeless people every single year. Been featured in CNBC and NBC throughout Philadelphia and New Jersey. I contribute in a very small way, but they do food, clothing, garments. They really do a lot. And in New Jersey during the winter, it's freezing, so I'm sure it does help. So I believe I have a unique aspect to really kind of look at both sides of the coin here. One, from like a capitalistic society, because obviously I love capitalism and business, and then B, from like a human society, to where looking at it from like a social worker, right? But what's very unique here, when I was building units in Los Angeles, most people think that, hey, we have a big affordability problem in Los Angeles, a really big housing shortage. What Los Angeles obviously wants to do is build housing units. They want to contribute to offering more supply. The more supply, the lower the prices go, the more affordable things would be, right? That would make sense. So for me, what I've learned is that actually Los Angeles, there is a very big struggle to get units built for the most part. Building and safety is a very, very big hurdle for most developers and most investors. For example, if you want to build, let's just say you want to bring one unit of housing stock to the market, what would take in most cases, even if you live close to a metro, is that you would need to supply a parking spot for that unit when in fact the tenant could simply hop on the metro and take the metro. They pretend as if you have that bonus, but in reality it's very hard to actually get the pass on not building that parking spot. In the parking spot, you'd either have a standard spot or a compact spot, but in most cases it's about 8.5 feet. You need about 18 feet behind for the car, and then you need about an 18 to 19 foot turning radius. So it's a pretty big endeavor. And that's why what you're seeing with a lot of developers in Los Angeles is that they are building their units up top and they are supplying the parking underneath of the structure. People would think, okay, well that would make sense. People need a car, right? To actually build a parking spot underground could cost between $50,000 and $80,000 for one parking spot. And the cost to build these units right now is probably $200 to $300 a foot at minimum. At minimum, because material costs are skyrocketing, labor is skyrocketing, everything's going up, right? So if you're building an 800-foot unit at say $250 a foot, plus the actual parking spot, you're over $300,000, $350,000 for one single unit. That does not include the hallways. It does not include common areas. It does not include anything else. So it's very easy to look at a deal and say, yeah, every single unit is probably going to cost me $450,000 or $500,000 per unit, right? If you were to actually rent that unit, there's no way you could rent it for $1,500 a month. Point blank, you couldn't do it. You'd rent it at a massive loss, right? That's why you have to rent it at $3,000 or $3,500 or $4,000, because they need to bring in all of the other bells and whistles to actually get it rented. They need to throw a pool in there. They need to make it look luxurious and beautiful. They need to throw a bellman. They need to throw concierge and security to make it appealing. Because regardless, they're going to have to bring in all these amenities anyway, and they would save very little not bringing in these additional amenities, right? So all of these are built into the rental rates in Los Angeles. The other thing that most people don't know about is that there's something called rent control, which essentially allows every city to implement their own set of guidelines in which landlords have to operate in. So what this generally does is it turns property owners into property managers for the state of California, and ultimately it keeps rents very low and depressed because people are they're less likely to want to move if their rents are below market value. So ultimately it takes away from the available supply and housing stock Those units are basically off market, and then all of the units that become available are going to be, brand new units that are not under rent control. So people would say, okay, well, this is this is the problem. But in reality, this is what their solution is. They have a $14 billion surplus in cash right now, exclusively for the homeless. And what they want to do is that rather than offering affordable units, $200,000, $300,000 units, very, very inexpensive units outside of Los Angeles, they want to build units between $500,000 brand new construction and $1.1 million per unit, right? Pretty insane, pretty incredible, really. Because if you put the numbers and what this would actually cost taxpayers, if you were to buy a $750,000 house and you had $150,000 cash as a down payment, you put 20% down, your monthly mortgage expenses are probably going to be about $3,500 to $3,700 a month, plus all the upkeep on the property. It's over $4,000. What I've learned growing up and being very close to someone that had drug and mental health problems is that you need to have someone there that's going to be able to assist in rehabilitating that person. That's why if you look at drug rehabs, for example, drug rehabs, they might charge $15,000 to $20,000 to $30,000 per month or more for the amount of work that they actually contribute to each person, right? So if you are going to spend $4,000 a month just for one housing unit, and this is not high end, their high end is $1.1 million. That would probably be about $6,000 a month just in mortgage payments, right? If you were to contribute the amount of money and the amount of programs and infrastructure that would need to go in to actually supply the backbone and support for all these housing units, it will be incredible. You might have $30,000 or $40,000 a month in expenses on one single homeless person, right? Now, what I believe is fascinating is that they believe the solution here, and they've already contributed a few options in San Francisco, one of which is that they're going to tax people, tax property owners and landlords and investors for not renting out their units. But a viable question would be, why would you want to rent your unit if you're unable to really collect rent? Right now in Los Angeles, for example, they have the eviction moratorium until June of 2023. And imagine how many landlords are going to be backed up in the legal system trying to get out a tenant that's not paying. You might have a 12 or 18 month backlog from the expiration of the eviction moratorium. So you might say, okay, well, it's 16 or 18 months from now until the end of the eviction moratorium. Tack on another 16 months, another 18 months. You might have another 3 years holding a tenant in your property with no rent collected, but yet your property taxes and expenses are still due. Now, that is one of the solutions that San Francisco is bringing into play in the new ballot. And then also what they're doing now is that they want to tax these property owners, and they want, San Francisco, they want people to take in convicts from prison into their house, and they're going to pay you $30 a month. They're going to pay you $30 a month to take a convict inside of your home with your family, or inside of one of your rental units if you have available units. But $900 a month for a place in California, that is insanely inexpensive. I don't know if I can find a place in California for $900 a month anywhere up and down the coast right now, just given how expensive housing costs are right now. So what I'm seeing is a very unique paradigm shift. What we're looking at is we're seeing this eviction moratorium, we're seeing all of the big struggles that small businesses are going through. And we're seeing these struggles being, I believe, repurposed to where now everyone is going to be, everyone's going to expect subsidies and assistance, whether it be through rent. Even mom and pop landlords are going to be struggling. People are going to be looking for assistance. And all of this is going to highlight the big problem of affordable housing in Los Angeles and highlight the need to help the homeless, because the homeless is only going to grow because of everything that's happening right now with all these subsidies and programs. Now, what I find fascinating is who really gets to pick these projects in Los Angeles. We look at Eric Garcetti. Eric Garcetti's right-hand man, Jose Huizar, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He was just charged. Right now he's fighting. So he's fighting these allegations of pay-to-play schemes for saying, hey, developer, you want this project? You got to pay this amount. You have to pay this amount. When you're in charge of a budget of $14 billion, is there an honest selection of who gets these assignments? I'm not saying there is or isn't. It's a question. Do you think that there's an honest selection between who gets these assignments to build these projects, right? And so you have all of this capital and then all of this dependence being built around a solution for the homeless that, to me, is not viable. It's not a long-term realistic solution, because ultimately what they're doing is they are pointing the finger at taxpayers. They're pointing the finger at business people and people that are contributing to the bottom line revenue of California, saying that, hey, you need to solve this problem. When in reality, this problem can never be solved with the strategy in which they're using to find a solution. I believe this is pretty crazy. Offering $500,000 and $1.1 million homes and all of the infrastructure and solutions necessary to fight this, when in reality, what they would need to do is they would need a whole new strategy, a whole new direction. And California, unfortunately, is headed down a very unique path right now as people begin to really see California's homelessness problem for what it is. It's getting bad. I mean, you drive in any $1 million neighborhood, you see RVs parked up and down the street. And to me, that's pretty concerning, especially if you have children running around. You don't know who's in those RVs. You don't know if, they could open the door and take one of those children. You never know. And that's why I believe Los Angeles is going through a unique paradigm shift. Property owners, investors, everyone is going to be really highlighting the problems going through Los Angeles right now through this homelessness problem. But I believe that there's going to be some people in there that are going to make many, many millions of dollars by, looking like a public servant, when in reality, they're just out there lining their pockets with cash. Drop your comments below. What do you think about this? The cost of building housing should really come down in a big way, and it really needs to be coming down by ripping apart all of the regulations with buildings and building and safety and building units and supplying housing units and rent regulation. All of this, all the red tape needs to come down and a real viable solution needs to come forward. This is not it, in my opinion, but drop your comments. I'm very curious as to what you guys think about everything that's going on with the homelessness problem in the state of California. Subscribe here, consider subbing on my TikTok for short form content. I'll catch you guys later.